Lakshmi ji, please go ahead.
Yes. Namaste and Hari Om, everyone. A warm welcome to today evening's session by Sri Gokulmuthu Narayanaswamy at Indica Moksha's Global Oneness Festival. We will start with a small prayer. I would request everyone to please close your eyes. Oh. Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sah Viryankaravavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvijavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavadpada Shankaram Loka Shankaram. Gokulmuthu, if I can request you to come on video, please. Yeah, thank you. We'll just introduce Sir quickly. Sri Gokulmuthu Narayanaswamy is a devotee and volunteer of Ramakrishna Math. He conducts classes on the Bhagavad Gita, Swami Vivekananda, spiritual life, leadership development, and life skills to various students and professionals. He is a founder of Vivekananda Study Circle in IIT Madras, and he is also a mentor of the Vivekananda Study Circle at IISc Bangalore. He is a regular contributor of articles and book reviews to Vedanta Kesari, a monthly magazine published by Ramakrishna Math, Chennai. His blog at www.practicalphilosophy.in has several of his articles. He is working as a director of product development at Itron India, Bangalore. He holds a B.Tech in electrical and electronics engineering from IIT Madras, an MSc in computer science from IISc Bangalore, and MA in philosophy, religion and culture from Annamalai University. He is currently pursuing his PhD in biopsychology and yoga at IIT Kharagpur. He took Mantra Diksha from Swami Gahananandaji of Ramakrishna Math. He has learnt Vedanta from Swami Paramarthanandaji of Arshavidya Gurukulam, and he has learnt yoga from Swami Swayambodhanandaji, a disciple of Swami Satyananda Saraswati. That is truly very inspiring for all of us as seekers. Over to you, Gokulmuthu ji. And to all our listeners, you can please put in your questions in the Q&A box. We will take it up and address it with Sir at the end of the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Lakshmi ji. So I'll start with, let me share the screen. Then we'll start. Om Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Prapanna Parijataya Totra Vetraikapanaye Jnana Mudraya Krishnaya Geetamrita Duhe Namaha. Harihi Om. Good evening, all of you, and it's really a pleasure to be on Indica Moksha Forum and on this Festival of Oneness. And Gita is one of the central texts or you can say even the central text, of course, after the Upanishads, which talk about this and which also leads us step by step towards the oneness, which is moksha. So today I'll present to you some ideas on spiritual sadhana based on Bhagavad Gita. Now, Bhagavad Gita has a sadhana panchakam, just like Acharya Shankaracharya wrote a sadhana panchakam. Similarly, in the Gita, in the 13th chapter, there is a sadhana panchakam, amanitvam, adamritvam, ahimsa, kshantirarjavam. So there are 5 shlokas, beautiful shlokas, which give the sadhana krama, which is there. But today, what I thought we can discuss is give a overview from the high level on what spiritual sadhana is, what is the goal, what is the pratibandhas, what are the obstructions to the goal, and what Gita gives as the roadmap to reach the goal. Right, so I'll present it taking some shlokas, and some shlokas we will see in detail, some shlokas we will just refer on the way. That is the agenda. Okay, so the first thing which we want to see start by is, this is Bhagavan Uvacha. This is the word of the Lord, right? Like we always keep saying, "Oh Lord, we want to please talk to me. We want to hear you," right? So the Lord has already given Gita, and that's why we always celebrate these words, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha, because this is the Lord talking to us. And this shloka, the 2nd chapter, 11th shloka, is in a way the first shloka of the Gita teaching. So after in the 7th shloka, Arjuna surrenders, Karpanya dosho pahata swabhavaha. And then after that, there is some descriptions by Vyasacharya. And finally, in the 11th shloka is where Krishna starts the Gita teaching. So that way, this is the first shloka of the Gita teaching. And similarly, the 18th chapter, 66th shloka, we all know, Sarvadharman Parityajya. So that is the last shloka of the Gita teaching. After that, it is more of whom should the Gita be taught, whom should not be taught, and what is the phala, and those kind of discussions, right? So between this shloka and Sarvadharman Parityajya is the entire Gita teaching there. Now, in our tradition, every text will start with an Anubandha Chatushtaya. So there are 4 things which have to be mentioned clearly so that the reader understands what this text is about. So that way, this shloka has the Anubandha Chatushtaya, though it is not very obvious when we look at it. So the shloka is Ashocyan Anvashochastvam Prajna Vadamscha Bhasase Gatasun Agatasunschcha Na Anushochanti Panditaha. Right? So Ashocyan Anvashochastvam. So you are, O Arjuna, you are worrying about people or things which are not to be worried about. Right? Prajna Vadamscha Bhasase. But you are talking words of wisdom. Right? As if that cha is there. Prajna Vada cha Bhasase means like as if, right? You are talking as if words of wisdom, which means like it is actually not, right? And then Gatasun, Agatasunschcha. So these are the only problems. Like what we want to go doesn't go, what we want to stay doesn't stay, right? So about what goes and what stays, Na Anushochanti Panditaha. The wise person does not grieve. So this is the starting shloka of the Gita. So the core of this whole thing is Na Anushochanti, right? So does not grieve. So that is the core of the Gita. And we all know about the Shadlingas, right? Like where the 6 markers in the Mimamsha Shastra to see what is the core essence of a particular text. So just like na anushochanti panditaha occurs in this shloka, in the 18th chapter, 66th shloka also, we see there ma suchaha, right? The Gita teaching ends as ma suchaha, don't worry. So the same word, you can see that comes there also, right? And so the core teaching of the Gita is na anushochanti or ma suchaha, don't worry, right? So now looking at the Anubandha Chatushtaya aspect of this, if we see, there are four things in Anubandha Chatushtaya: Adhikari, Prayojana, Vishaya, and Sambandha. So Adhikari is who is the target audience. Prayojana is what is the expected result. Vishaya is what is the message. And Sambandha is what is the method of application, right? So suppose if it is a recipe book, now the Vishaya will say, okay, this is the ingredients, this is how to do. Sambandha will be like, okay, you have to take a pot, you have to get all the ingredients and you have to cook it. Only then you will get the expected result, right? So like that, the Sambandha gives what is the application, right? Some text might be only intellectual, some text might be for clearing doubts, some text might be for practice, right? So there are different Sambandhas will be there. So now for the Gita, who is the Adhikari? Right? Who is the target audience? So keeping Arjuna as the pretext, Krishna is teaching the Gita, right? So we all know the shloka, right? Like Sarvopanishado Gavaha Dokta Gopalanandanaha Partha Vatsa Sudhi Bhokta, right? So keeping Partha, Arjuna, like the calf, right? Like as the pretext, Krishna is milking the Gita from the Upanishads and then giving it to us, and the wise people are the ones who are drinking it. So who the target audience, who is the target audience here? So that is indicated here as Ashocyan Anvashochastvam Prajna Vadamscha Basase Gatasun Agatasuncha. Like together we can say to an extent. Now it's very important here because first thing is Ashocyan Anvashochastvam. Arjuna is worrying, right? He is worried, right? And it is also important, Prajna Vadamscha Basase, but he is also talking words of wisdom. Now, when will a person talk words of wisdom? Number one, he should have given thought to it, right? So, which means Arjuna doesn't surrender directly. He tries to solve the problem. That's what we see in the first chapter and also the first 10 shlokas in the second chapter. We see that Arjuna tries to reason out. He tries to reason out what is the problem. And he comes to some conclusions, which are wrong conclusions. And then he also understands that these are wrong conclusions. And then finally he says, Shishyasteham Shadimam Tvam Prapannam. I am your disciple, please teach me, I am confused. Right? So the Prajna Vadamscha Basase basically is very important because Arjuna has tried all possibilities to solve the problem by himself. And he has understood that he is not able to solve the problem. And so he has come and surrendered to Krishna. So which means what? He has done his homework. So the Adhikari is a person who sees sorrow in this world and who has thought about it, read about it, discussed about it, tried to solve the problem, tried to find solutions, and is finally has found that none of his solutions are working or they are not efficient. Right? So he has done his homework before coming here. And Gatasun, Agatasuncha, about what stays and goes. Then next one is Prayojana. What is the Prayojana? What is the expected result? Na Anushochanti. Freedom from grief. Right? Freedom from grief is the Prayojana of Gita. And of course, Gita means Gita Upanishads, because Gita is the essence of the Upanishads. Right? And also, in fact, about the entire Veda, because Upanishads are the Vedanta, which means it's the essence of the Veda. So which means even the Purva Bhaga is also included. Now, what is the Vishaya? What is the message? Panditaha. That indicates what is the message. Wisdom is the way. Panditaha means wise person, right? It doesn't say a person who works hard, doesn't say a person who does social service, doesn't say any of those things. It says Panditaha, right? A wise person. So which means the message of the Gita is wisdom. Wisdom is the way, right? So na anushochanti panditaha. And what is the sambandha application? Now here we say prajna vadamscha basase. So which means like talking is not enough, right? And you might have read everything, but then you have to interpret it correctly, right? So interpreting one's own life based on the wisdom, that is the sambandha, that is the application, right? So the wisdom, that's why Swami Vivekananda always says religion is the manifestation of the divinity always in man. So the manifestation is there, is needed, right? So always the moksha, you have jnana, but the jnana has to be manifested. That is what the nididhyasana step we have, right? The manifestation of the knowledge. So that is the sambandha or application. Now, this shloka beautifully gives the Anubandha Chatushtaya. Now, when we say wisdom, right? Now, wisdom of what? Knowledge of what? So there, unequivocally, Gita, Upanishads, everyone say, knowledge about the self. Atma Jnana is the one we are talking about. Fine. So now, before we go further, let us analyze the goal still more, right? In a very logical way. Now, you can all see the picture. This is of evolution, right? So, in a way, actually, if we look at the entire Vedic way of life, evolution is the goal, right? Right from the beginning to the end, evolution is the goal. We will see. Now, every living being wants to be happy, right? Right from an ant to a frog, to a fish, to a bird, to an elephant, to a human being, everyone wants to be happy, right? But the thing is, different people have happiness in different things, right? So if you look at the lowest organisms, right? Let us say, for example, like we have a bird or a fish. Now, what does success in life mean for a bird or a fish, right? If the bird or if the particular animal survives till adulthood, and if it gets some children, then that is considered as a successful life, right? Survive and multiply. And what drives survival and multiplying is hunger, thirst, lust, pleasure, pain, fear, sleep, right? Ahara, nidra, bhayam, maitunancha, samanyam etat, pashubir, naranam, right? So these are the kaopyo majakaro, is the animal pursuit, right? Now, if you look at slightly higher animals, which live as groups, right? It can be a herd of elephants or a pride of lions, right? If you look at those, then you have, within the herd, they protect each other, they help each other, and then together they fight the other predators. Together they might fight the other herds, which might try to, catch their feeding area and feeding grounds. So like this, it is there. So you have, things like love, hatred, anger, right? So love towards your own herd, hatred towards other herd, anger towards the predator, right? You have ambition, courage, competition, possession, pride. All these kind of values or these kind of emotions come into picture for an higher animal. So if you take, for example, an elephant, what does a success in life mean for an elephant, right? So it should have protected its pride to its herd. It might have, fought some predator at some crucial time, and it might have taken care of the children of another mother who had died, right? So like that, like it would have done certain things to its herd, and then that is considered as a successful life. Not just its own survival and multiplication, but survival of the herd together, right? So these are things which are there in the higher animals. Now, when we come to human beings, then we have values. We have right and wrong, beliefs, ideologies, duties, rights, right? And values like justice, sacrifice, truth, discipline, compassion, right? So in the animal world, it is all competition, right? The strong one always overpowers the weak. Whereas in a human society, compassion rules. The strong one always protects the weak, right? And in the animal, like it is just, if you're hungry, you eat, that's it. Whereas human beings follow discipline, right? Today is Ekadasi, I will do fasting, Upavasa. Today is Shivaratri, I will do Jagran, right? So those kind of things are only in human societies, right? In animals, the moment they reach their puberty, they start multiplying. Whereas human beings say, no, I will continue my studies. As a brahmachari, I will live and wait till marriage. And there are so many regulations, right? And also, like, some of the human beings decide to live as monks. They take lifelong brahmacharya as Naistika brahmacharis or as sannyasis, they live. Now, these are all human values, right? These are all special for human beings. and not there in the animal kingdom, right? And if you go still one step further, then we come to the spiritual goal. Because all these happiness got by any of these things, they are all time bound. There is a beginning and an end to it, right? Adi and Adi Anta, right? So both Adi is there and Anta also is there. But if you ask what kind of happiness we want, we want unconditional, permanent happiness, right? We want happiness every day, everywhere, morning, evening, in the house, in the road, right? Everywhere, right? Now, if unconditional, permanent happiness is possible, then it should be there here and now, right? If unconditional, permanent happiness, which is available everywhere at all times, is possible, then it should be there here and now. And by that, if it is possible, then no one should be having any sorrow at all in this world. But sometimes we become sad. Now, why? So that is where we say it is because of the lack of true knowledge of the self. So this is what the Upanishads and the Gita say. If you know yourself truly, then you will be able to tap this intrinsic, unconditional, permanent happiness. So this knowledge of the self is the goal, ultimate goal to reach there, right? So that is the Na Anushocanti Panditaha, basically means the Panditaha is this spiritual knowledge, true knowledge about the self. Then you will have Na Anushocanti, right? So no, you have unconditional, permanent happiness, freedom from all sorrow. Now, this is what is mentioned in our scriptures as the Chaturvida Purushartha, right? Whatever the lower organisms pursue, that is called Artha, security. What the next level of organisms pursue, that is called Kama, pleasure. Then still next level, that is called Dharma, which is the human values. And then the spiritual goal is Moksha, freedom, right? So this is the plan, right? This is the roadmap for the sadhana. Now we'll see. So manifesting your higher values and freeing yourself from the lower traits. That way, it is not only a way you you go along the spiritual progress for yourself. That is also a contribution to nature and to the evolution, right? This entire universe, right? If you look at from the scientific point of view, right? It started with a big bang some billions of years ago, and life started on Earth millions of years ago, and life has evolved right from stones and sticks, up to, it has become amoeba, and then it has become some fishes, and then it has become some reptiles, and then some finally mammals, and then finally human beings, right? So out of these so many millions and millions of species which are there on Earth, we as human beings are special, right? So this is one of the ways of interpreting, like that Manushya Janma Durlabha, right? Like, so out of the existing so many species, it is really special to be a human being, because only in a human life, it is possible to pursue the higher goals, right? Now, having got this human birth, having got this human life, if we spend our time on the lower goals, then that is Mahati Vinashti, right? As the Kena Upanishad says, right? It is the biggest calamity, right? So we need to work for higher goals, right? Now, here is a Gita shloka which talk about this, right? So this is the second chapter, 71st shloka. So second chapter has got 72 shlokas. Just the last but one of the second chapter. Vihaya kaman yes sarvan pumams charati nisprihaha nirmamo nirahankaraha sa shantim adhigacchati. So if you see here, you can find all the words which you have seen so far, right? So a person who has abandoned all desires, lives without getting attached, freedom from the sense of mind, freedom from the sense of I, he attains peace, right? So what does it mean? So the goal to become free from threefold bondage. So the first one is the sense of mind, right? Nirmama, which is seeking security in the world, right? Then the Vihaya Kaman, right? So freedom from pleasures, right? That is the Kama. So first is Artha, then Kama. Then the sense of individuality, right? Nirahankara. So ahankara is identification with the body and mind. So the identification with the non-self is the ahankara. So nirahankara is becoming free from the sense of limited individuality. That is nirahankara. So these three, when we pursue, when we attain, then we will become at peace. Shantim adhigacchati. But when we become peace, doesn't mean we'll just go and sit in a cave and then forget about everything, or just pop off. Still, you will be pumams charati nisprihaha. Without any attachments, you will be moving around in this world, serving the world, right? And as a Jivan Mukta. So that person lives as a Jivan Mukta and he is free while living. Now, this goal is called moksha. So, moksha is, this is the definition for moksha. Vihaya kamanya sarvan pumam sharati nisprihaha nirmamo nirahankaraha sa shantim adhigacchati. So, this is the definition for a Jivan Mukta, or Sthita Prajna as the second chapter calls, or Gunatita as defined in the 14th chapter, or Parabhakta in the 12th chapter. It's all means the same, right? So basically, this is the goal which we are going towards. And if you see, like, this is a beautiful quotation from Swami Ranganathananji, the 13th president of the Ramakrishna Math. Are you growing spiritually? Can you love others? Can you feel oneness with others? Have you peace within yourself, and do you radiate it around you? That is called spiritual growth, which is stimulated by meditation inwardly and work done in a spirit of service outwardly. So this is what is spiritual growth, right? So we have to be very clear about what is the goal that we are going towards. So to be, more explicit, right? Let us see what is guaranteed and what is not guaranteed. It's very interesting. Gita never promises a healthy body. By attaining becoming a Jivan Mukta, will you have a healthy body? No. By attaining a Jivan Mukta, will you be able to make a lot of money? No. Worldly relationships? No. Miraculous powers? Gita beautifully never mentions any miraculous powers anywhere. When it talks so much about the Jivan Mukta, the marks of a Jivan Mukta. Arjuna asks so many questions about a Jivan Mukta. Krishna gives answers. But nowhere it is mentioned that a Jivan Mukta will have miraculous powers. Nowhere, right? And it also doesn't say a Jivan Mukta will be free from problems. Problems will be there. But in spite of all these things, then what is guaranteed in the Gita? You will have peace even amidst the ups and downs of life, right? Ups and downs will be there, but you will have peace of mind, right? So, we have, right, like Sita Ushna Sukha Dukkeshu Labha Labha Jaya Jaya, right? Shita Ushna Sukha Dukkha Labha Alabha Jaya Ajaya, everything will come in life, but you will have peace of mind, right? And you will evolve and outgrow your animal nature, right? That's what we saw, right? And you'll be able to stand against the temptations of the senses and the mind, right? The Gita gives a beautiful example like a tortoise, right? Withdrawing the senses and the mind, right? So you'll be able to do that. And you'll have less of desire, anger, greed, delusion, arrogance, jealousy, all these things. And this is what exactly, if you find the Sadhana Panchakam, which I told you, right? Like in the 13th chapter, 7th to 11th shlokas, like, basically you can see the list of what actually you become free from, right? And these will reduce gradually. My teacher, Swami Paramarthananji, he says, like, these things will reduce, not suddenly, but slowly. And it will reduce under 3 categories. The frequency will reduce, intensity will reduce, and the recovery time will reduce, right? Suppose, let us say you get into a fit of anger. Maybe earlier, like, you used to throw things around, then the intensity will come down. Maybe you might shout, and the intensity will still come around. Maybe you might become angry, but you will not shout. And then slowly, like, you will be able to handle it and you'll become free from anger. So the frequency also might come down, and recovery time also will come down. This FIR reduction, my teacher calls it. So now this is what is guaranteed by moksha. By moksha, you should be very clear what is guaranteed and what is not guaranteed. Okay. Of course, there are shlokas like Yoga Kshemam Vahamyaham, Na Kalyana Krit Durgatim Na Gacchati, right? And it talks about, Suchinam, Srimatam, Gehe, like, basically, like, it says a person who does sadhana and then who doesn't attain Jivan Mukta still he will next birth, he will be born in a rich family with a noble family, right? Those things Gita guarantees. And if you do sadhana in this birth, he says, I will take care of your material prosperities. Like if you work for the people for the living beings in this world, Gita says like yoga kshemam mahamyaham, I will take care of your welfare. So those things are there. I'm not denying that, right? Name bhakta pranashyati, right? My devotee never perishes. So all those shlokas are there. But by and large, right, there is no guarantee of these things. Gita never guarantees, but this is what is guaranteed by Jivan Mukta, right? By Jivan Mukti, this is what is guaranteed. So we should be very clear about what is the goal towards which we are moving. In one word, the goal is to evolve from animal nature to human nature, and then from human nature to divine nature, right? So from Artha Kama Pradana to Dharma Pradana, and then from Dharma Pradana to Moksha Pradana. That is what we say, like, right? Like Sarva Dharman Parityajya. So which means like Sarva Dharman Api Parityajya, which means already you have given up Artha Kama. So now at the last step, you give up Dharma also, and then you move towards Moksha. So Sarva Dharman Api Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja, right? Fine. So now, having known that, okay, the truth has to be reached by knowing the self, what is hiding the truth? So we say evolutionary baggage, right? So basically, this body is that of an animal, and many of the emotions that we have, they are all remnants of our evolution, right? Anger, jealousy, lust, greed, right? These are all not human emotions. These are all animal emotions, right? Never call them as human emotions, right? These are all animal emotions: anger, lust, jealousy, greed, right? Arrogance. These are all animal emotions, and they are the evolutionary baggage, right? We have to grow beyond them. We have to outgrow them to establish and manifest our human nature, right? And this body is designed for survival and not for freedom. That is the biggest problem. So there are three specific problems which we saw so far. One is the survival instinct, right? The survival instinct is kind of hardwired into the brain. That is why our ancestors were able to survive, and that is how we are here, right? The survival instinct, and then pleasure seeking, right? This is also kind of hardwired in the brain. And the individuality, the sense of I, right? The sense of individuality, that is also there in the brain. And this is what is called as Brahma Granthi, Vishnu Granthi, Rudra Granthi. Granthi means knot, right? We see in Lalita Sahasranama, these are talked about, and even in the other lot of scriptures talk about these three, right? So now we have to break these three knots, right? We have to get over these three problems, and Gita gives a very gradual, graded, step-by-step approach to solve this problem. Now, these things where this survival instinct, pleasure seeking, and individuality were useful so far, right, in our animal life, right? As an animal, they are useful, but to become spiritual, we need to overcome them, right? And this is called Mahamaya. These three is what is called as Mahamaya, which hides the truth from us. Okay. So we need to see. So whole spiritual sadhana is step by step removing these three layers, right? So resolving or like opening these three knots, right? Becoming free from these three knots is what is spiritual sadhana. We will see how to do it, how to go ahead, right? So Gita gives a beautiful roadmap. In a lot of shlokas, the roadmap comes, right? So what is the problem? The problem is depending upon the world for security and depending upon the world for pleasure, right? These two are the problems, right? For security, we depend upon the world. What do we mean by that, right? We depend upon bank balance, we depend upon our salary, we depend upon, like a house. And like my Paramathanji puts in a very nice way, like, you build a house and then you put a security for the house, and then you want security for the security, you buy insurance for him, like you give him a stick. So, like the security after security after security, multiple layers of security we build up, right? Because we depend on the world for security, right? And we all know, like, our past prime minister, she was killed by her own security guards, right? So no security is reliable, right? And our Mahatma Gandhi, like when people wanted to give, high level security for him, he replied, right? If my Rama protects me, if my Rama wants me to live, no one can harm me. And if my Rama doesn't want me to live, no one can save me. So then finally, only just for protocol, the security was anyway had to be followed. So anyway, you don't depend on the world for security. So world dependence for security is one of the problems, right? Artha. And world dependence for pleasure, kama, is another problem, right? So we depend on the world for pleasures in the form of sense objects. So Krishna says, you have to break them. How do you break them? So breaking the world dependence for security is done by karma yoga and service, right? Sarvatra samabuddhi, right? So this is the 12th chapter, 3rd and 4th shlokas, right? Where Arjuna asks, okay, can I be spiritual but not religious? And then Krishna says, yes, you can. But there are some prerequisites, right? He says, Sarvatra samabuddhi, sanniyam yendriya gramam, and sarvabhuta hite rataha. So basically, like with that preconditions, okay, fine, possible, but then it is difficult. That's what Krishna says. So in the 5th shloka, right? So now here, so if you look at it, if you want to understand this, so karma yoga and service is the way to break this Brahma Granthi, right? So what will you get? How do you know that, okay, karma yoga has worked? You will have equanimity in all situations. Sarvatra samabuddhi will be there. And how to break this Vishnu Granthi, world dependence for pleasure, dhyana yoga, and compassion, right? That is the way. So sanniyam yendriya gramam will be the result. Control of the mind and senses will be the achievement of dhyana yoga. And if you have achieved these two, then you are called a yoga ruda, right? 6th chapter, 4th shloka, we all know, like, right? It talks about yoga ruda, right? So what is the yoga ruda, right? So he says, like, so 6th chapter, if you see, like he says, Arurukshor Muner Yogam, Karma Karana Muchate, Yoga Rodasya Tasyaiva, Shamah Karana Muchate. So Yoga Roda is the intermediate milestone, right? To reach Yoga Roda, Karma is the way, right? Arurukshor Muner Yogam, Karma Karana Muchate. Right? So Karma and Dhyana, these two are combined there. And that is the way to become Yoga Roda. And then he says, Yoga Rodas, for Yoga Roda, Shamah Karana Muchate. Right? Shama is quietude is the way, right? And the definition of yoga roda is also given there, right? Yada hi na indriyarteshu na karmashu anusvajyate sarva sankalpa sannyasi yoga rodasta dochate. So that is this milestone is defined as yoga roda. So 6th chapter, 4th shloka defines that. And once you have got this, then you have the jnana yogyata, right? You have the yogyata or qualification to get into jnana yoga, and then jnana yoga will work. Before that also you can go through jnana yoga as a preparation, but then jnana yoga will really work only when you have this pre-qualification, only if you are a yoga roda. And yoga roda definition also Gita gives very clearly, and the way to become yoga roda also is very clearly given, right? And that jnana will give you the knowledge of your own self as the pure consciousness, and that will give you the real independence. So the limited identity will also drop, which is the Rudra Granthi. So the Brahma Granthi drops here, Vishnu Granthi drops here, Rudra Granthi drops here, and then you attain moksha, or actually you realize your own intrinsic, infinite conscious nature, right? So that is the roadmap given in the Gita, right? Now, you can also see there is another, there are so many shlokas which gives this roadmap very beautifully. This is another shloka here. Yoga yukto vishuddhatma vijitatma jitendriyaha sarva bhutatma bhutatma purvanapina lipyate. Right? So having attained purity of mind, right? Yoga yukto vishuddhatma, right? So how do you get purity of mind? Yoga yukta, by karma yoga, right? And then vijitatma jitendriyaha, right? So and then attain mastery over the senses by control of the mind, right? Vijitatma, Jitendriyaha, and then Sarva Bhutatma, Bhutatma, seeing himself in the self of all living beings. That is by Jnana Yoga, right? So Karma Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, Jnana Yoga, right? The Brahma Granthi, Vishnu Granthi, Rudra Granthi, right? The security instinct, seeking pleasure in the world, and the limited identity. So all these three have to be dropped or crossed over to attain the goal. And after that, you don't sit quiet. Purvanapina lipyate. He is not tainted even if he works. So karma doesn't stick to him, right? So no more agami karma and all that. right? So that is what is meant by Kurvan Apina Lipyate. So the 3 steps, right? So Karma Yoga, doing work without attachment to results. So that will make you free from seeking security in the world. Because this is a training, right? What is the training of Karma Yoga? You do the work, but don't stick to the results, because that is where we seek security from the results. So we need to break that habit of seeking security from the world. How do you break that habit? By doing work without attachment to the results, right? And then Dhyana Yoga, by doing meditation. Again, we want to seek pleasure from the sense objects. So how do you break that habit? Free from all sense objects. You close your eyes and sit, and you tap the pure joy which comes from within, which you normally get in deep sleep, right? So then once you're able to tap that, then that weakens your seeking pleasure from the world in the form of sense objects. Then the third one is Jnana Yoga, understanding one's own true self by Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, by which you will be free from the false idea, right? And such a person will move around the world without getting affected by the work. So this is like this. This is one of the shlokas. Like this, there are so many shlokas in the Gita which talk about this. Like, so my blog is here, practicalphilosophy.in. So I have kind of in one exercise, I collected several shlokas and created a big table of the shlokas which talk about all the 3 steps here, right, in a table, and it was also published in Vedanta Kesari. You can have a look at it. It is called 4 Yogas in the Gita, right? There is an article in my blog. If you want, you can have a look. Okay, so now Gita, as I told you, the 12th chapter, the 5th shloka says, following this path, being spiritual but not religious is very difficult. That's what Krishna says, right? So, and in the 6th and 7th shlokas, he gives what is the way, how to follow this sadhana along with bhakti, right? So how do you combine with bhakti and follow the same roadmap? The starting is the same, world dependence for security and world dependence for pleasure. This is the problem. So how do you break this world dependence for security? By depending upon God for security, right? So etu sarvani karmani mayi sanyasya matparaha. So matparaha means having God as the goal, right? Sarvani karmani mayi sanyasya, right? Offer all the actions to the Lord. So, and whatever results you get from your actions, you say, yes, by Ishvara Prasada, as Ishvara Prasada, I got it. So whatever you do as a gift to God, and whatever you get, you take it as a gift from God. That's a very beautiful statement of Chinmayanandaji. So this is the way you go, offer all actions to God. That way you shift from world dependence to God dependence, right? And then Ananyeneva yogena mam dhyayanta upasate, right? So you do meditation with full concentration. Ananyeneva yogena, right? So without any different goals or anything, like you meditate upon the Lord with concentration. Mam dhyayanta upasate, right? So, and of course, for both the cases, maya veshita chetasam. That way you will be able to engage yourself in the Lord. And the Lord says, if you do these 2, then he says, Teshamaham samudharta mritti samsara sagarat bhavamina chirat partha. Right? So he says, Arjuna, if you follow this way, you don't need to go through the last step of Jnana Yoga. I will give that free to you. Right? The same thing is told even in the 10th chapter also. Krishna says, if you kathayanti, mam kathayanti, like people who talk about me and people who about me, like from within them I shine forth, he says, right? 10th chapter, 9th and 10th shlokas. So anyway, so here if you see, so here Teshamaham samudharta mritti samsara sagarat bhavamina chirat partha maya vesita chetasam. Right? So he says, if you follow these as along with bhakti, right, depending upon the Lord, he says, the last step, which is the difficult step, Jnana Yoga step, he says, I will take care of that for you and I will give you independence. Either in this world itself, in this birth itself, as Jivan Mukta, or as Karma Mukti in the Vaikuntha Loka or whichever Ishtadevata which you have, so he will take care of that, right? Because it doesn't apply only to Krishna or Vishnu, like, because the whole Gita is very universal. So it applies to God in any form you can worship, and the same everything applies, right? So this is the sadhana krama of when you combine with bhakti, and this is what Gita promotes, right? In so many shlokas, this roadmap is given actually. Right? So if you look at it from the point of view of gunas, right, then see, like we all know there are three gunas: tamas, rajas, and sattva. Right? Tamas is lethargy, rajas is activity, sattva is harmony. And interestingly, this is what Newton's three laws are. Right? Newton's the same tamas, rajas, and sattva applied to matter. Newton's first law says, right, inertia, talks about inertia. Second law talks about F equal to ma, which is about rajas. Third law talks about equal and opposite reaction, right? Like, so just sattva, harmony. Anyway, so now here we are applying that, and Gita applies to various situations, right? Like if you see the 14th chapter and 18th chapter and even 17th chapter, like you will find this tamas, rajas, sattva applied to different domains, and this is used as a framework to explain so many things. So now from tamas to rajas, you need to do kamya karma, right? As a person, because a person who is in tamas, he understands only sticks and carrots, right? So to whom kamya karma, action with worldly and heavenly goals, right? This is what is the way. Right? So the Veda Purva Bhaga mainly talks about these, right? The Karma Kanda Veda, which basically to move from tamas to rajas, right? And in Gita, like very small part of the Gita talks about this, like 1 or 2 shlokas, that's all, right? And most of the shlokas even condemn the kamya karma, right? Both in the second, you can find those shlokas even in the second chapter, 4th chapter, right? Like 9th chapter. So you can find shlokas which are condemning kamya karma. But then like that is needed for, because Arjuna is not in that state. You can understand it that way. Because that instruction is not for Arjuna. It might be there for some people who are in tamas state, but not for Arjuna, because Arjuna is already in rajas. So for him, he has to go forward. So to go from rajas to sattva, you have to follow nishkama karma, action with higher goals, dhyana, meditation, nishkama bhakti, right? These kind of things, right? And from sattva to gunatita, you need jnana, spiritual knowledge, prapatti, surrender, these kind of things, right? So this is the yoga roda state. So yoga roda is one who is in sattva. So from there, you need to go to gunatita, or gunatita is basically a jivan mukta, right? So, or siddha prajna, depending on which chapter you the definition comes, like the same, different definitions for the same state, right? So now Gita doesn't touch upon this much. This is not the focus of Gita mostly. And this is the main focus of the Gita. Several shlokas talk about this. And this is also a focus of the Gita. A lot of shlokas in the Gita talk about this. But that is a prime focus of Upanishads, Bhagavatam, and those kind of scriptures. Okay. So this is the way, like the whatever we saw, right? Karma yoga, dhyana yoga, like you can also look at it from this point of view as the sadhana krama. So we are running short of time. So let me rush through some of them. So basically what we have been talking about, principles of karma yoga, right? So basically the universe works on natural law. As you sow, so shall you reap. The Lord is the giver of the karma phaladata, right? And whatever your past deeds decide. So you need to get over your security instinct, right? And this is a very important one. So basically the key to open your mind for higher perspectives and possibilities is in the hands of Mahamaya. Unless you have cleared your debts, it will not be unlocked for you. Your mind will not develop detachment and understanding unless you have repaid what you have taken. So we have the Panchamaha Yajnas, right? Like the Pancha Runas are there. Deva Runa, Pitru Runa, Bhuta Runa, Manushya Runa, Rishi Runa. The 5 Runas are there. And unless you clear them, Mahamaya will not open the higher possibilities for you. You won't even understand if you read the Gita and Upanishads, right? So Karma Yoga is the way to, repay your debt so that Mahamaya will open the lock for you. Okay, so that is the main thing about Karma Yoga. And the whole thing is give. Okay, nature will take care of it. And okay, so we don't have time for this. And maybe if there are any questions, we'll see. And then after Yajna, which is giving back, then you have the Dana, right? Dattavyamiti yaddanam diyate anupakarine deshe kale chapatrecha taddanam satvikam smritam. So you give to a person, a person who is deserving, deshe at a deserving time, right? And deserving place, and diyate anupakarine, without expecting anything in return. So that is called, that's a definition for dana given in the Gita. And then next step is tapas. So this yajna, dana, tapas is the karma yoga, explanation of karma yoga given in the Gita. So tapas, there are 3 levels of tapas: physical austerities, verbal austerities, mental austerities. And you can go through them. These are all 17th chapter, right? So now in a short, right? So Gita talks about, gives a list of tapas, and the tapas which it gives is very interesting. Like say, Satyam is a tapas, right? So you talk only the truth. Priyam, you always talk only what is pleasant. Hitam, you always talk only what is good for others. Anudvegakaram, you always talk softly, don't shout, right? And Manaf Prasada Samyatvam, right? Like you always have a smile on your face, right? You always have only positive thoughts. Like this, it gives, these are all, it calls as tapas, right? So like this, lot of tapas is listed. You can go through it, like even Saucham, right? Cleanliness, Arjavam, truthfulness, Brahmacharyam, self-discipline, Ahimsa, non-violence. So all these things are listed as tapas, okay? And Swadharma, like it says, like, Swakarmanatam abhyarchya siddhim vindati manavaha. So doing your duty and offering to the Lord, that is also is needed as a part of the karma yoga. And this yajna, dana, and tapas, you offer it to the Lord, right? So yat karoshi yadashnasi, right? Yat juhosi. Yat juhosi is whatever you do as yajna. Dadasi yat, what you give as dana. Yat tapasyasi, whatever you do as tapas. Kaunteya tat kurushva madarpanam. You do all those things as offering to me. So this is the way you offer everything to the Lord. And I think I will skip through, so because of want of time. So this is so 12th chapter 13th shlokas, like where it talks about different types of so basically, like whatever you talk about, you meet different kinds of people, and it says how you behave with them. And it basically talks about your attitude towards people, objects, situations, right? And this is an explanation of karma yoga and law. And dhyana yoga, Gita talks about, 6th chapter is full of lot of instructions on dhyana yoga, and 12th chapter also talks about dhyana yoga. And already, like I talked about what is the benefit of all these things. So basically, meditation, right, like frees you from the bondage of the sense organs, and meditation gives you a personal relationship with God, right? And it quietens, and by the way, knowledge, like shines forth from within. Like, so meditation has got all these benefits or purposes, right? And meditation process, right? Like I think I'll skip this. Like I think the very standard meditation process which will be taught to you in any yoga class or any guru, any spiritual tradition. Like the process is almost the same. The basics are always the same, right? And then Gita talks about like the 14th shloka in the 12th chapter talks about more about meditation, right? Like, so I think I'll skip this. You can anyway, the recording is there, and you can go through it later, right? So we will so basically here, if you say what this shloka talks about is Same Bhakta Priya. Like, so basically what it talks about is true devotion is to say, oh Lord, I belong to you, right? Like that is what we see in the Ramayana, right? Like Tavasmi, right? Like Sakrateva Prapannaya Tavasmi iti tyachate, right? Like, so you say, oh Lord, I belong to you, and you behave in a way that you will be liked by the Lord. So that is what is bhakti, right? Bhakti is not asking things from the Lord. That is okay to start with, but then finally you have to say Tavasmi, oh Lord, I belong to you. So that is what here he always describes it, and then finally says like Mat Bhakta Same Priya, right? Such a devotee is dear to me, right? So this is again a summary of the Karma Yoga. So basically you ensure that you give more than you take, okay? And offer everything as gift to the Lord. And Dhyana Yoga, like, so how to lead your entire life? Because Dhyana Yoga, see, in the 6th chapter, Arjuna asks, like, okay, I cannot control the mind. So Krishna says, well, like, yeah, mind is difficult to control, but then you can control the mind by living a life which is conducive to meditation. Like, you cannot say, okay, like 23.5 hours, I will do whatever I want, and half an hour I want to sit for meditation, and my mind should come under my control. That is not possible, right? So you have to lead a meditation conducive life for the rest of the time, and then you will be able to sit and meditate when you want to. So that way you are Dhyana yoga actually is not just half an hour a day, right? Dhyana yoga is something which you do throughout the day, and the half an hour a day which you do is a support for that. Sri Ramakrishna gives, like, he calls it as mane, kone, bane. So mane means you should always be huh? So here, so basically your meditation, so you have your mane, kone, bane. So mane means in your mind. You should always think of the Lord in your mind. And to be able to think of the Lord in your mind always, kone means in a corner. At least twice a day, you have to sit in a corner and you have to do your sadhana, your whatever puja, chanting, meditation, whichever you have decided. And to be able to do that properly, vane, at least, like a weekend every month or so, you have to go and stay in some ashram or some place as a spiritual retreat, and you should recharge your batteries. So the 3 levels of sadhana is recommended by Sri Ramakrishna, right? So Gita also talks about the same thing. If you see the 13th chapter, right, it talks about living, going and staying alone, right? Arati jana samsadihi, right? Like away from the din of worldly life, you go and sit and vivikta desho sevitvat, right? Like all those words are there in the Gita, right? So you have to do this so that you'll be able to meditate. And this will give you, so we already saw, right, what is the benefit of meditation. Meditation will cut you from dependence on the world for pleasure, right? So that is the benefit of meditation, and this is the process for meditation. So do japa as much as possible and remember the Lord as much as possible, right? And Gita gives 3 stages: Artha, Artharthi, Jignasu, and Jnani. 3 milestones in spiritual life. And depending on the milestone, the worldview will differ, the attitude towards work will differ, and your attitude towards worship also will change. So in the first stage, Jiva, Jagat, Ishvara, that is the individual and the world and God will be separate. And you work in the world and offer the fruits of action in gratitude. And when you worship the Lord to free yourself from afflictions and to get desirable things. So this is the Artha Artharthi stage. Next stage, you look at Vishwarupa Ishvara. So the Jagat and Ishvara become the same, but Jiva and Ishvara are separate. And then so because you know that the world is nothing but the Lord, you offer work itself to the Lord, right? That is the second stage. And you worship the Lord to give you knowledge and strength and calmly face the ups and downs of life. Then the third stage is a Jnani stage, where there is only Ishvara, nothing else. So all the 3 have merged together. This is the Advaita Jnana. So where you know the Lord is everything, including yourself. So you offer the doership also to the Lord in complete surrender. Then there is nothing left, right? So it's the Lord who works through you as using you as an instrument. So these are the 3 stages in the spiritual life. You'll go from one to the other automatically, right? So yeah. So that's all. This is just a essence of whatever we have discussed so far, right? So just a summary given here. You can take a snapshot and you can go through it later, right? So this is everything what we have been talking so far. So I'll stop here, and if there are any questions, I can take.
Thank you, Gokulmuthu ji. That was a very beautiful presentation with a lot of insights for all of us. There are 3 questions. We'll just take that quickly. The first one is, can the references from Gita indicating that it's from Krishna Chaitanya, can the references from Gita indicating that it includes Purva Bhaga of Vedas as well, and not just the Uttara Bhaga, that is the Upanishads, be provided?
Yes. So when in the second chapter, Krishna tells Arjuna why he should fight. So in that he approaches from all these 3, right? So he gives from dharma, from artha, kama, dharma, moksha, right? So from all the 4 purusharthas, he explains like why he should fight. So that is the only place where he actually points out the Purubhaga part. So where like you might be remembering the shlokas, like it will say, he says like, okay, if you fight, then if you die, then if you live, then you will get kingdom in this world, and if you die, then you will get the Viraswarga, right? So that is the place where he talks about it. So this is second chapter, 30th shloka to 38th shloka. So where Krishna talks about why Arjuna, he kind of reasons with Arjuna, where he says why Arjuna should fight, and there he talks from these points of view, right? So second, you can go to second chapter, 30th shloka to 38th shloka. So I will also tell you, like, so 30th shloka he gives from the point of view of moksha. 31 to 33 he gives a point from the point of view of dharma. 34 to 36 he gives from the point of view of artha, and 37 to 38 he gives from the point of view of kama. So these are the shlokas where he talks about artha and kama.
All right. Thank you for that answer. The second question is by Mahesh Aswane. So he says, so the central thing is the purity of the mind, which is also getting into the Sattva Guna Sthiti, where karma will not, where we do not stick to results. This, when coupled with jnana, the false identity with the body is removed. The question is, does this process automatically result in self-realization? And what special powers does one attain?
Okay. So first I'll answer the last question. What special powers a person attains? Nothing. No special powers. Okay. That's what I've been telling. I showed that slide, right? Like, so Gita doesn't promise any special powers. Okay. Basically, like, you become, the special power you have is you will not be moved by any ups and downs which happen in your life, right? That is the Siddha Prajna. That is what you get, right? And that itself is it's a superpower, right? Like, no one can, no one can blackmail you emotionally, right? No one can make you do anything. So you will always be, you'll have the clarity of mind, no biases, right? No emotional baggage, no seeking, approval from others, no doing things to please others. So all those things will go away, right? So you have the Shat Ripu, right? Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsarya. So the Shat Ripu freedom from the Shat Ripu is what is moksha. Okay, freedom from the 6 afflictions. Okay. Now, will Sattva Guna directly, getting Sattva Guna give you jnana? Now, there the question, that is where the I showed you the 12th chapter, right? Like the 3rd and 4th shlokas, like second shloka, basically Arjuna asks, like, can one be spiritual but not religious? That is exactly the question you're asking, right? So now Krishna says, if you go in a secular approach, which means, okay, like karma yoga, okay, you do, like social service, you try to make yourself, a very good person morally and all that. And then meditation, okay, you watch your breath and you, count your breath, and you are, like your mindless, what do you call, mindfulness meditation. There are so many secular meditations, right? So suppose you follow all that. Then, yes, your mind will become sattvic. And then you also need to work towards jnana by, Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, like study the scriptures, intellectually understand them. And eventually you will understand, because also there is this Sarvabhuta Hite Rataha, right? You also seek the welfare of all living beings. So the 12th chapter, 4th shloka gives you the prerequisites for that. If you do all that, you will attain, right? Okay, there is possible, but then Krishna says it is difficult. So that is where in the 6th and 7th shlokas, he gives you Etu Sarvani Karmani Mayi Sanyasya Matparaha, right? So he says, whereas you do it this way, and Bhavamina Chirat Partha Maya Veshita Chetas, right? So I will save you from the Mrityu Samsara Sagara, right? So he says, I will take care of that for you. So answer to your question is, if you go in a secular approach, you have to become sattvic, then you have to work towards jnana, work hard, because you have to, let the intellectual understanding seep into your subconscious mind, right? That's what Paramathanji says, right? Like Nididhyasana is the conversion of intellectual understanding into emotional strength. That is Nididhyasana. Now, that part is a difficult part, and that has to happen, right? Like, so that is difficult. Whereas if you involve Ishvara right from the beginning, right, and if you offer all the work to God and if you meditate upon God, then already, like, along with your karma yoga and dhyana yoga, you are involving the emotions also, right? So when you complete them, then automatically, like, you will very easily get over your individuality. So basically, like, from Vishwarupa Ishvara to, you'll say, like, oh, Lord is everything in this universe, including me. So that including me becomes just a very simple step. From Vishwarupa Ishvara to Jnana is a very small step. Whereas if you go through the secular approach, it is the Jnana Yoga is a very big jump. So that is why Krishna says going through a secular approach is a very difficult path. Whereas if you go through a religious approach, if you involve Ishvara, then you go from Ekarupa Ishvara to Vishwarupa Ishvara to Ishvara as the pure consciousness, which is the Advaitic knowledge. So then that path is a much easier path. That is what Krishna says in the 12th chapter.
Thank you. Bala Bharadwaj says that it was an excellent presentation and they will probably look up your blog and reach out to you.
Yeah.
And is this presentation available anywhere online?
Yeah, I will put it up on my blog maybe in a couple of days.
All right.
And of course, this is recorded, so you can go through the recording also. But I'll put this presentation also on my blog.
Okay.
So in my blog, if you see, there will be one link called e-library, and under that, if you go to presentations, that is a section where I will put it. It is not there now. It will come maybe in a week or so. You can have a look.
Okay. And we'll close with the last question. Shravan Kumar asks, can you please advise on what chapters we can chant daily before or after meditation and japa?
15th chapter and 12th chapter. So these are luckily the shortest chapters. Both of them have got only 20 shlokas. So 15th chapter gives all the theory you need, and the 12th chapter gives all the practical advice you need. So these two chapters are the standards. This is a tradition. Traditionally, 15th and 12th chapters are what is chanted always. And you can memorize these two chapters and you can chant.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir. And just to reiterate, Gokulmuthuji's blog address is www.practicalphilosophy.in.
Yeah. Thank you. So we can chant Om Shanti Shanti Shanti, and
yeah. And just a reminder to everyone, tomorrow morning we'll have a session by Dr. Nori Sivasenani from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. on Vedanta Sadhana application in daily activities. Also looking forward to see all of you there. We'll conclude with the Shanti Mantra. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Thank you.